And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. We're back onto my list of personal suggestions, and as you've all kind of realized and figured out, I'm a big fan of Bleach, so this was the next one on my personal list. And I've already done like Kenpachi, Ichigo, Yamamoto, I think I've done Soifone, and I think I even did Unohana. So at this point, I'm going through all the captains, all like the main players of Bleach, and we're on the second, but the original Squad 3 captain we met in the beginning of the series, Gin Ichimaru. Gin, for those of you who are not familiar with Bleach, let's just give us maybe 30-second little bio here. Bleach, you have the world of the living, and then you have the Soul Society where Soul Reapers, Shinigami, Death Gods, reside and help keep the balance of the world and the living world. There is a group called the 13 Court Guard Squad, or the Gotei 13. They are composed of it's basically a large military force composed of many Shinigami, and at the top of the rank are 13 captains of 13 squads. Gin is one of those captains. Now, Gin's always been one of my favorite captains in Bleach. He's always been good. He was one of those guys who always kept his cool. He always seemed to know more than he was letting on. He seemed to be very fond of creeping people out and getting under their skin. He also had a really cool ability. It was basic, but a really cool ability, which we'll talk about momentarily. But first and foremost, because his sword is a melee type predominantly, in terms of combat and how it works, I knew that we needed someone from the Hone Edge line here. But I think because of how powerful his Bankai is, and very quickly, for those of you who are unaware of Bleach characters in terms of what their swords do, Shinigami have swords called Zanpakuto. They are swords that are basically infused with the Ryatsu and character of the individual who wields them. They are sentient in their own way. Not even their own way. They are sentient. They have a spirit inside of them. But as it's been revealed later on in the series, the sword is nothing more than an extension of you. The sword is you. You are the sword. It is nothing more than a reflection of yourself. Gin's is called Shinso. Shinso's main ability in Shikai, and it has two forms. Shikai, which is the base ability, the standard ability release, and then Bankai, which is the full power of the sword unleashed. His Shikai Shinso is very simplistic in what it does, but he can use it very effectively. It extends. That's all it does. It extends, and it can extend 100 swords lengths, which is still pretty far. And we'll talk about the difference between it and the Bankai in just a second. But because of that, I knew that of the three sword Pokemon, we needed Aegislash for this one. Because of how kind of scary the Bankai is, I felt that was prudent. And now that brings us to the Bankai and what we're kind of referencing here for the Bankai a little bit. See, the Bankai's name is Kamishini no Yari, which is God-killing spear, translated. And essentially, it extends, I believe he's, now, in the manga and in the anime, he does lie about how far and how fast it actually extends. It's not as fast or as long as he said it was. But it's clear that it's still exceptionally fast and long. It extends like a quarter of a mile or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the length was, but it's a ridiculous amount of length. And it extends and retracts 500 times faster than the speed of sound. This allows him, to literally just cut the top of an entire city off, overwhelm someone with, just the sheer retraction and extension of the blade using abilities like Kamishini no Yari Butadan, which essentially just means he's firing the blade so much that it looks like there's thousands of blades coming at you. So that's the primary abilities, but the Bankai's secret and true ability is that at the moment of its extending and its retracting, it briefly turns to dust. And if he were to hit a target with this blade and then retract it or extend it further, he can leave a sliver of the blade inside the opponent. Now, this is important for those of us who aren't in the know, because inside the blade is a poison that is so deadly, it will literally dissolve godlike beings down to the cellular level. And if you don't have a MacGuffin on hand that will save your ass in these circumstances, you are cooked. Or you're just powerful enough to neg it. But even then, that's debatable. So, having a Bankai that revolves around a secret poison, and the fact, too, that Gin has been described as being very snake-like in his approach, his demeanor, even his appearance. He keeps his eyes kind of closed a lot of the time. Also kind of described as being a little fox-like at the same time. I felt like Survivor was a good pick for this, particularly because it has moves like Poison Point, moves that on contact can poison, which would be very apt given the description of the Bankai, where you need to have physical contact with someone in order for that ability to work. But going with the fox-like aspects of Gin as well, I thought, yeah, a fox-type Pokemon, but who can I put on there? Because when we look at foxes, there really aren't that many foxes. You have the Ninetales line, obviously, and I guess Ninetales does have a bit of like a physical similarity, but I don't buy it in terms of matching him. And then when we get past that, foxes become a little scarce until you basically we have the Nickit line, and I originally had Feeble here, but I realized no, that doesn't work. And Fennekin is based off of Fennekin Fox, but that I don't feel works. But luckily, we do have a Dark Fox type Pokemon that I actually think works a lot better, and that's Zoroark. Zoroark being obviously somewhat of a trickster, an illusionist. Its ability is illusion, and that works in the idea that Gin was always hiding his true self from Rangiku, from Aizen, from everyone, just to meet his goal, which was ultimately, spoilers, you haven't read the manga or seen the anime, it's only been out for years, to kill Aizen, which he failed to do. So I think Zoroark, who's always been a tricky Pokemon, is a good Pokemon match for this guy, who, again, is kind of snake-like, but also kind of fox-like in the same way. A Pokemon that is sly and cunning kind of makes sense, or a creature that is. So beyond that, though, one of the things Gin says about his Bankai, which again now we know is not 100% true, but it's still insanely fast, is that it's the fastest Bankai. Now, whether or not that's entirely true, you can take that for as is. But let's go with the idea that it's still an exceptionally fast Bankai, which even if it's not as fast as he says, is still true. It's exceptionally fast. We need an exceptionally fast Pokemon. And it's amazing how times have changed, because I put Crobat, another poison type, which again works with the idea of his Bankai. But it's amazing how times have changed, where Crobat used to be like among the pinnacle of speed. Like the only mon faster than were either Legendaries or Electrode at 150. But now it's like, I looked recently, Crobat isn't even in like the top 20 anymore. But I think it works in this scenario very well. But another thing, and this is one of those things that is very important when making a Pokemon team, you can't solely look at the abilities of someone. You got to look at their personality, their likes and dislikes, their relationships. Leading into this one, his long-term friendship, and possible romantic feelings that may have been there for Rangiku. I mean, I ship it. I would have honestly liked to have seen them get together. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so, what Pokemon could I choose to represent Rangiku? Well, I went with the idea of her Zanpakuto being Heineko, which is translated to Ash Cat. Ash is usually a product of fire, so a fire cat. Now, I could have gone, I actually had an option or two here. I could have gone the Litten line. I felt a female Pyroar, though, being Rangiku is his female long-term friend, I was a bit more appropriate here. Just because it just makes sense to me to go that route. And whenever I get around to doing Rangiku, there will probably be a Pyroar on the team, and something to represent Gin as well. Just because of her personal relationship there. But beyond that, though, the last mon on the team, I wanted to try to capture some aspect of the spear. But it was just, there's no Pokemon that exists at this time that works as a spear. Not really. So, because its name translates to God Killing Spear. That's what it translates out to. The Bankai, Kamishina no Yari. So I'm like, okay, let me think of something else. Is there an ability of the Bankai that I can still utilize? I'm like, no, I've already done the poison multiple times and the speed. But what about the technique like the Buto something? I can't remember the name of the technique, honestly. What about that? And I thought on it, and I'm like, well, hold on. Is there anything? I'm looking at all the steel type moves, and I found the move that actually works. Tachyon Blade, and it's described as multiple sword strikes or multiple blades hitting an opponent at once, which is the signature move of Iron Crown. And so that makes sense because Gin was actually very powerful. Having a legendary on the team would make sense for this team. And so long term, I guess the question is, first off, before we get to the question, this is the team I chose. I like it. There could be some things we work around with it, but I overall like it. It's a fairly unique looking team. But the question is, as always, how balanced is this team? And I'll say this. There is no type that fully cleaves this team, save for one. It's got 2 Mon on this team with both the psychic types that are weak, both with poison types that are weak to psychic. 2 Mon on this team, which is the psychic type, iron psychic, and the other ghost type, which are weak to ghost. 2 Mon on the team that are weak to fire. 2 Mon on the team that are weak to dark, with the psychic and the ghost type. 2 Mon on the team that are weak to fighting, the Pyroar and the Zoroark, because Iron Crown's psychic is a resistance. 2 Mon that are weak to fire. What else did I have? Oh, 2 Mon that are weak to rock? Really? Was there 2 Mon that were weak to... oh yeah! The Crow... I'm looking at it, it's like, was there? Yeah, the Crobat and the Pyroar are weak to rock. And... yeah, then... and when 2 Mon that are weak to fire... yeah, I mentioned it. The one type that cleaves through this team, though, is ground. Because the only 2 Mon you have on this team that don't have a specific weakness to ground are Zoroark and Crobat, and that's only because Crobat's got flying and therefore is immune. Poison, ground is a big weakness of poison. Fire, we know it's weak. Steel, we know it's weak. Unfortunately, Aegislash does not have Levitate as an ability. If it had Levitate, we'd be having a different conversation. I mean, it would still be the main weakness of the team, but it'd be a different conversation. Now, luckily, no one here has a ×4 weakness to anything, save for, no one's got a ×4 weakness. Because all the other minor weaknesses these guys carried, for example, Crobat has also a weakness to ice and electric. No one else has a weakness to that. So, it's fairly well balanced out. I think, no team is without weaknesses. But if you can just mitigate them to the best of your ability, you should be doing okay. The question, though, now becomes, as always, as we end this video off, and I try to keep it maybe under 20 minutes if I can. I got 7 minutes. Let's do this. Which regions can you become champion in? And when it comes to Kanto, I'm going to tell you right now, you cannot become a champion in Kanto. Honestly, you don't have any real strong issues for the majority of the game. Brock should be no problem. Misty's no problem. Surge. Erica's a breeze, actually. Koga. All these guys are no problem. It's the problem quickly shows up when you got to deal with Giovanni. Giovanni is where there's a giant stopgap here. Because even having something like, Iron Crown, or having something like Crobat, is only going to get you so far because all of his Mon are ground types. 2 of them are ground rock types, and then you have ground poison types as well. It's just is not a well-matched team. I don't know if you could get past that team. And granted, his team isn't anything that special. It's just not the most powerful. But hypothetically, if you could get past it, you still couldn't get past Blue, because Blue has a ground type on his team as well. Now, mind you, Blue's team does vary depending on the games, but he's always got a ground type on that team. If I remember correctly, it's a Rhydon. Let me actually just get that real quick up here. What was the team? What was the Mon on that team again that he had that basically you were not getting past? Where are you? There it is. So what was the Mon that I basically said it's not happening? All right, there's the Elite Four. All right. So yeah, let's see here. Nope. There we go. No, that's the rematch. I want the original fight you do. There we go. Yeah, it's the Rhydon. A level 59 Rhydon, you have no... Here's the thing. It's one thing to have a type disadvantage, but still have coverage. Or it's another thing to have a type advantage, but have no coverage. The two... None of these Mon can learn, really, except for Iron Crown, which you can learn a close combat move. Or the move close combat. You have no strength against that Rhydon. Like, the two Mon that aren't specifically weak to it, you have no good answers to that Rhydon. Not to mention, you still then got to deal with the Alakazam. You still got to deal with the Pidgeot. Now, luckily, you don't have any real strong weaknesses to either of those guys. But then you got to deal with the Gyarados, which you do not have any strong answers to as well. And then it's a mix and match of Gyarados, Exeggutor, Arcanine, and the starter. Either way, you can't beat Blue here, I don't think. So, unfortunately, no, Kanto, you can't become a champion. Johto, you honestly can get all the way through Johto without any strong issue. Really, honestly, you can. But you stop at Lance, because Lance is the same problem as Blue. You have no strong answer to Dragon types on this team. And you have to keep yourself, my rule for this is always, you got to keep yourself within the level, roughly speaking, of the strong. You can be a couple levels above, but you can't be like 10 levels above. You can't over level by a huge margin. I think the gap for me is like 3 levels. You got to prove you can beat them on their own level terms. And unfortunately, you just don't have strong answers to dragons on this team. And unfortunately, he's got answers to a lot of the stuff you have. He's got Ice-type moves. He's got even Electric-type moves. He's got Rock-type moves. He's got Water-type moves. Like, you can't beat Lance with this team, I don't think. You can put up a good fight, and Aegislash certainly can be resistant to a lot of stuff, but he's also got the damn Charizard. So, you're not going to be handling him very well here. Now, Hoenn was one where I'm like, no, you should have very little issue with this region for a good while. You honestly aren't going to have any problems throughout the entirety of your run. But then you get to the Elite Four. And the first 3, whose names, I love Hoenn, but their Elite Four's names, except for Drake, I always forget. But the Dark-type Elite Four member, you actually shouldn't have too much of a problem with. He's got actually a lot of Dark Grass on the team. The Ghost-type, you should not have a problem with. Even the Ice-type, you should not have a problem with. Again, you are stopgapped by Drake, particularly because those Flygon have Earthquake. And you have, not only do you not have a good answer to Dragon on this team, you don't have a good answer to Ground. So, because, while Flying is immune to Ground, it has no strength really against Ground. And even if you manage to get past that, you then got to deal with frickin' Steven. That was another type I had forgotten to put on here, because by all accounts, okay, so Poison isn't inherently weak against Steel, if I'm remembering correctly. It's just that Steel is immune to Poison, if I remember my typings correctly. So your 2 Poison types, who are kind of cruxes on this team to a certain degree, are no good against this team. They're good against like half the team. And even then, and so Steel is actually neutral in terms of taking damage, but it's immune in terms of damage it takes from Poison. So, I don't think... And then Metagross, I believe, knows Earthquake, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of those guys know Earthquake. So, even with close combat on your side when it comes to the Iron Crown, you're still not getting past this guy. So, Steven, you can't beat. Well, I'm not going to be making it to the under 20 minutes. Let's see if I can just wrap this up. You're not going to be able to go... Here's the big truth. If you could get past all the gym leaders, you're stuck at Bertha. You're not beating Bertha. It's an entire Ground team. You just can't get through. Ground wrecks 2/3 of this team, and you're not getting past Bertha. But I'm not going to lie either. Rorik, I almost don't think you can get past Rorik, just because Seviper, while isn't bad stat-wise, especially for early game, you've got 3 rock types, and that Craniatos hits so freaking hard. I don't know if you can get past it. But if you could, you're done at Bertha. So you can't even get into the big parts of the Elite Four. Then you get into Unova again. I do not see you being a champion at all here. You're really going to be struggling early on with Elise because those Emolgas are going to kind of just be cleaving through your guys, and you're not going to have a fully evolved team at that point. You won't even have a Dubblade at that point. So Elise is going to be very problematic to get through. Even Lenora is a problem. But Lenora is a problem because they all have, but because Armand have dark types, Hone Edge being a ghost type isn't going to matter against a normal gym here. But again, by the time you get to Elisa, only your Crobat has a specific weakness, so it will be difficult, but you should be able to manage. It's once, honestly, you get to the Elite Four that, once again, you just aren't going to be able to manage. And this is simply due to the fact that the fighting types have ghost coverage. The ghost type gym leader has psychic coverage, or Elite Four member has psychic coverage. The psychic gym leader has, or I keep saying gym, Elite Four member has ghost coverage and dark coverage. And like all those Elite Four members actually cover their bases. And then you still have to be either Alder or Iris. And again, no answer for dragons on this team. And Alder's is weird. Like, you do have answers to, say, Excavalier and Selgor, but you don't have strong answers to, say, Drudagon or Volcarona. So I don't think you could be, again, you can't be champion of the Unova. You can get all the way through Kalos, but you can't beat Diantha. I'll just summarize that real quick. Because once that Tyrantrum comes out, you don't have a good answer for anything here. And then you still got to deal with Gudra. Gorgai, surprisingly, would do very well against this team, being Ghost Grass. Just because it can handle both the Psychic type and the other Ghost type. And then Mega Gardevoir is so problematic for this team on so many levels. Because even though it's a Fairy type, it's a Psychic type as well. And it's going to cleave through Seviper and Crobat pretty quick. It's also going to take down Zoroark pretty quick. This is assuming you even have these guys left at this point. So honestly, I don't think you can beat Diantha. You can probably get all the way to Leon, but that Dragapult will wreck your shit. Sorry if I'm swearing, kids, but that Dragapult will wreck your day. There's no way. There's no way you get past that thing. Because that thing has literally all the coverage you could ask for. All of it. Let me get Leon's Dragapult up here real quick. Because I'm not... You think I'm kidding. That Dragapult alone, depending on what your team makeup is, will end your run. No matter what. And it's a pseudo-legendary. That's why I'm so adamant about how powerful this thing is. It's also among the fastest pseudos around. In fact, that's not even among. It is the fastest of the pseudo-legendaries. All right, you want to know what his Dragapult has? By the way, he starts with Aegislash. So right out the gate, you got to go Aegislash to Aegislash, which is going to be problematic. You want to know what this Dragapult has? It has Shadow Ball, so it's going to be able to cover your Aegislash, and it's going to be able to cover, the Aegislash. It's going to be able to cover the Aegislash, no problem. It has Flamethrower, so it can cover the Aegislash and your Iron Crown. It's got Thunderbolt, so it now covers your Crobat as well. And to top it all off, it has Dragon Breath. So that means it can just wreck shop with anything and paralyze it. That's not even bringing you into the Haxorus, which has one of the most bonker attack stats for a Pokemon that's not a pseudo-legendary. Then his team varies a little bit. But if he's got the Seismitoad, it's got Earthquake. Oh, and by the way, that Haxorus has Earthquake too. So that ground weakness, have fun with that. And again, you have no strong answers to Dragon. So Leon's team will wreck your day. Just wreck your day. Last but not least, we got Paldea. And once again, it really just comes down to the 4. You can get through, frankly, all the gym leaders without any big issue. Even Iono, you can get through. But then you hit Rika. And say it with me, folks, a ground-type trainer. And an Elite Four member at that. Say what you will with the problems with Scarlet and Violet. And as someone who really enjoyed the game, I recognize the game was not perfect. But that was more from a technical issue. Granted, they did decide to not make the towns as explorable as they did. Even Galar, you could still go into the buildings. So Game Freak, if you can, fix that for Gen 10. But, yeah, the problem is that those Elite Fours, the Elite Four of Paldea is, like, legitimately good. It's a legitimately strong Elite Four. And because every generation that comes, you keep adding more Mon to the deck, so you keep getting more variety. And she's just got way too much coverage for you to be able to take her down. And even if you could, you still then got to go up against a Steel-type Elite Four member in Poppy, who you only have one real good answer. Two, technically, if you count the close combat Iron Crown nose. You then got to deal with a Flying type, which is Elite Four member, which is just a weird type for this team to go up against. And then a Dragon type Elite Four member, which, again, say it with me, no strong answer, the Dragon. So unfortunately, while this is a really cool team, and a relatively balanced with only one real weakness, that one real weakness so hurts this team. If only half the team were actually weak to ground, we might be having a different conversation. There might be a better route to go. But as it stands, no, 2/3 of the team, which is the majority of your team, are weak to ground, and your other two don't have enough to make up for their losses. If, say, one of these was a legendary instead and had legendary Pokemon level stats, we might be having a very different conversation. But as it stands, no. I don't think you can become champion with any of these Mon in this team. But that's not true. Let me rephrase that. You can become champion with these Mon, just in a different team with different other Mon to support it. But this is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Do you think that, yes, you could become champion? Do you even like this team? Or would you do something different? Let me know. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.